Mr. Top.
The signal you are receiving is coming from deep inside of FEMA Region 1, well within the battle lines of the municipal corporation known as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, radiating out to the darkest corners of Al Gore's internet from our secret broadcast bunker cleverly disguised as a middle-class living room. This is Red Pill Politics.
Well, howdy there, patriots and vaccine dumpsters. Welcome back to your weekly dose of Red Pill Politics. I am your opinionated and abrasive host, Dave Kopaz, and this beaudaciously voluptuous doll beside me, none other than my most beautiful wife and Quibi co-host, Miss Cynthia. How is your everything there, baby doll?
As long as you're in my world, everything is.
Oh,
awesome.
Come on. You're buttering me up kind of early now, aren't you?
Copacetic.
All right. Hey, here we are. It's that time again, Sunday night, 7 o'clock. Good to see you all out there. Hope you all had a good week. Things are looking pretty hairy out there. Boy, are we going to get pelted with some legislation. It's going to come at us from every angle you can imagine. So get ready for it. We're going to be talking about it here on the Red Pill Politics Show. We're going to talk about things that are on the national level that are coming down like a great big federal wet blanket upon us. We're going to be talking about a lot of things right here from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. All right, because I'll tell you, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, is we are the petri dish. All right, Massachusetts and California, both coasts, they got it and they got it bad. They float some of the worst legislation comes our way. If they can ram it through here, they figured they can ram it through anywhere. So, let's all learn together. Let's share information, make absolutely sure that all our brothers and sisters know what the heck is going on out there.
Amen.
All right, it's a pretty scary world. Wouldn't you agree, sweetie pie?
Yes, it is. It's a frightening existence living in this total Commonwealth. It's getting more difficult by the second.
Yeah, you can't turn television on, not for a moment, and or radio or anything. It's all bad news. I personally cannot believe it.
Me neither.
What's going on? We got Pelosi. She's put the word out that they're pull out all the stops. Mm-hmm. There's supposed to be gun legislation like you'll never see. You're going to see the illegal immigration, the sanctuary cities. That's going to hit us like nobody's business, man. It's all part of what was just rolled out recently by our little freshman congresswoman there, a little intellectual powerhouse, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh, jeepers. You actually memorized her name?
Oh, for crying out loud. You kind of have to, and they've already given her, a cool little acronym, AOC. It's certainly a lot easier to follow, but nonetheless, what an absolute embarrassment that is. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe what I was reading there. Not reading. There really isn't much to read yet. They've been pretty slow in getting the actual language of this out. But what they were able to stumble through in their news releases and such, we already know what it is. It is Agenda 21. So I'm super psyched. You know, we got a guest speaker on tonight. We'll talk a little bit more about him, but it's directly related to this, and it's big news. We announced in the primer that we put out. And it all kind of materialized pretty quick here, but I'm psyched that it's moving in this direction. But the filmmaker, as you recall, last year, there was a documentary called Good Guys with Guns. It was in the process of being filmed. And we happened to get right in the way of it. The Second Amendment rally, we had some great speakers up there, caught the attention of the film producer. And he came up and he filmed several of the interviews right there at that rally. And, you know, we kind of stayed in touch. I've known him for a few years now. We stayed in touch, you know, before and after that event, obviously.
Cool.
And he was polling a lot of the the financial supporters, the underwriters, the people that purchased the film and events that he went to. You know, he polled his audience. And, you know, a whole list of things came back that people were concerned with.
Right.
And the thing that kind of rose to the top, oddly enough, was that one thing that includes all the others beneath it. Every single one of those individual concerns that people said, oh, we'd love to know more about this. America needs to know about that. All of those things were under the umbrella of UN Agenda 21.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be talking about the new film. There's been some decisions made. We got the filmmaker on. Perfect timing. Don't think not for one moment that this new Green New Deal is not Agenda 21 all balled up into one huge mess that's going to be thrown your way. That is what it is. This is an incredible opportunity. I know a lot of my listeners and the people I hang with probably have already identified this fact, but know that it's bad news. And I'm here to say that we can turn lemons into lemonade here. They were right. We'll show a clip in a little while, but our Senator Markey here from Massachusetts, he was up there blubbering about this mess too. And, you know, he mentioned that there's 3 phases. The first phase being to educate and motivate, and then, I don't know, whatever he said, to actually institute the law. You'll hear it in his own words. But the first one, and he is correct, is to educate. And we're going to capitalize on that. Well,
yes, we are.
We may see that their little green agenda here is being put up. That's going to be what gathers all the eyes. But, boy, we're going wherever they exist, and that includes their stank little offices in the State House, and we're going to educate their butts. And if they do not listen, if they think they're still going to just steamroll over us with this utopian, socialist, global dragnet of nonsense, they're crazy. They're crazy. We'll bring on the political pain. That's what happens. We've got to learn to push that political pain button, which reminds me, there was a great workshop that was just this Saturday. I wish my schedule allowed for it. I had a couple of my friends went to that. Had a great time, learned an awful lot. So there's things going on right here in Massachusetts. You know, we ain't dead yet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a behemoth. It is as big of a bill as I've ever seen, and it's going to surely include all of those items that we have fought so hard to, to keep out in bits and pieces. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but we're going to talk more about it. It's individual segments. We're not going to stay fixated on any one thing. But this is, without a doubt, an opportunity that we should not let pass us by. It's an opportunity to educate. Hal Shurtleff and I, we've been out and we fired up the little tour again.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
So if there's any of you out here, and this is not limited to Massachusetts, but we've been I think every one of the 13 colonies and then some. But if you have got a venue, and you can get an audience of people together. You know, give us a room full of people, and I'm telling you, by the time we get done, It's usually a 2-hour event that includes Q&A afterwards. We'll answer every damn question that comes our way. Let us know. All right, this is about educating. We can easily work this Green New Deal into the presentation that we've been given for years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're on our way, and you can help. Okay, you can help. Set up.
Always.
Look around in your area. Hit your friend list and your networks, and ask them if they'd be able to pitch in with you, and get enough people. And boy, we like to see a room with 50 or 100 in it, but we'll talk to a dozen people too. So do what you can. If you can pull that together, get a hold of us. You know how to get a hold of me. I'm pretty easy to find. Hit the Red Pill page, hit my personal page, Hal Shurtleff at Camp Constitution. Great friend. Camp Constitution's coming up around the corner too, so you folks with young cubs want to get them off to a summer camp for a couple of weeks, have a real good family time, that would be the place to go. That's the website. Check out campconstitution.org. We got our callers, our guest callers going to be coming in about 7:30, so we got a little time to do some house cleaning here. Let's see if we pull up there's an interview by the Ocasio-Cortez. Let's see if we can get that staged and ready.
I'm telling you, her voice is a little bit irritating.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. It is a little bit like chewing on aluminum foil, isn't it?
It is. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. All right, let's see if we can get that over there. And we'll hit the old play button. Get your barf bags ready and your vomit shields. Here we go.
I'm very excited about the support. We'll see. You'll see when we introduce this legislation, we have a very large amount of co-sponsors in the Democratic caucus. We're at over 60 now, 60 original co-sponsors in legislation, which is an enormous amount. And we even have more that weren't able to be original co-sponsors. So there are more that are co-sponsoring the legislation even after our initial rollout. I'm very excited. I see, and this includes broad support across the party. I'm very excited about it, and I'm really excited for our party's overall commitment to addressing this issue.
Are you offended that Speaker Pelosi called this the green dream?
No, I think it is a green dream. And I think that it is. And I think that all great American programs, everything from the Great Society to the New Deal, started with a vision for our future. And I don't think that, I don't consider that to be a dismissive term. I think it's a great term.
And there is no greater champion on climate change than Nancy Pelosi.
That's right.
I was the chair of the Select Committee on Energy Independence and Global Warming. There's no greater champion. And just at noontime today, she said she welcomes the enthusiasm of the backers of the Green New Deal, and that's what we have here. All issues go through 3 phases: political education, political activation, political implementation. So you're seeing the beginning of the education and activation phase, and ultimately we're going to have the legislative implementation.
That's right. It's going to be an education phase, all right.
Can you explain where the New Deal stands on nuclear power? There's some confusion after the initial fact sheet went out that said there was no room for nuclear. Is that where you stand on this?
The resolution is silent on any individual technology, which can move us towards a solution of this problem. This is a resolution that does not have individual prescriptions in it. So it is silent, the resolution itself.
But there was a fact sheet that said no nuclear coming from...
That is not part of the resolution.
Are there any Republicans you're talking to that have signaled any willingness to come aboard? And can you name any names?
I won't name names, not trying to get anyone in trouble here early. But I do think, but I do think that it, when I do kind of speak to members of the Republican caucus, there are a few issues where they truly believe and express interest in coming together. And in addition to criminal justice reform and infrastructure, which this is in many ways an infrastructure bill as well, is the environment. And we are really starting to see that environmental and climate issues are issues that swing voters decide who they're going to cast their vote on. So I'm thrilled to say that there is interest.
Do
Congresswoman.
you guys expect this to be offset by higher taxes?
So, do you want me?
You go, yeah, please.
I figures
So I
Marky
think,
wouldn't
and
want
I
to talk
spoke
about
this
taxes.
This morning is that
Right.
I think that part of this is also really examining the role of government and what government is for. And I don't think that, I think it's important that we get away, and we also study our economic history, that government expenditure is not always just 100% offset by a tangible increase in that tax that same year. And so I think that we certainly saw that we certainly see the Republican embrace of that with the tax cut bill, which does not generate economic growth. But I'm looking forward to really communicating that this is an investment. You know, for every $1 that we spend on infrastructure, we get a return on that investment. For every $1 that we spend on tax cuts, we get less than $1 back. And so this is about making smart investments, and this is about making investments that actually generate returns and not lying about the fact that they generate returns. They actually generate returns.
And one thing we're going to fight for is to make sure that all the renewables, all electric vehicles, that they're getting the same tax rates that the fossil fuel industry has received for the last 100 years. That's a fight worth having, and they might consider that to be a tax increase, but that is something that we are going to try to remove from the tax rolls of our country. Question? Yeah, yes, right here.
So, I mean, about a decade ago, you were leading a sweeping movement for cap and trade measures.
Yes.
Died in the Senate. We cost some members their districts. And are you worried at all that this will give Republicans, you know, a cudgel to beat up Democrats that are going too far left going into the 2020 election? Sorry, for the Congresswoman, do you have any assurance from Speaker Pelosi that this resolution will come to the floor?
Okay. The difference between 2009 and 10 and today is the movement that has now been built, okay? We did not have that movement in 2009 and 10. This is now a voting issue across the country. The green generation has risen up, and they are saying that they want this issue solved, and they want the people who work in this building and occupy the White House to
reiterate on that as well is that I think a lot of times when people say who lost elections on what, I often think they're wrong, just personally. I don't think that we lose elections by addressing climate change. I don't think we ever have, and I don't think we ever will. I think that what this is really about is how ambitious we're going to be. And what I sense, at least in some portions of the country, is that people grow frustrated because they don't feel like we're being ambitious enough, and people grow frustrated by half measures and solutions that don't comprehensively and effectively touch their everyday lives. And on the other half of the issue, I want to reiterate what Senator Markey also said earlier, is that Nancy Pelosi is a leader on climate, has always been a leader on climate, and I will not allow our caucus to be divided up by silly notions of whatever narrative. We are in this together. We are 100% in this together. And we have different solutions and different mechanisms, different cars we got to drive to get there. But we got to take a lot of different paths. We have the Environmental Subcommittee on Oversight. We have the entire Energy and Commerce Committee. We have the Judiciary Committee that also is going to play a role in so many of these tangential effects. And it's going to take all of us doing it together. And I think that's the really important point to get across, because this issue faces all of us, and we are not going to get divided over it, period. We leave no one behind on our solutions.
And we have, by the way, the chairman of the Rules Committee, Jim McGovern, with us, who decides which bills come to the floor of the United States House of Representatives, right? You don't get more powerful than that.
Congresswoman, may I ask a question?
Amy from Axios. Amy. Thank you very much. Are you concerned about the fact that this requires
much bigger increase in government that will feed into
I'm leaving.
President Trump's and the Republicans' accusation that the Democratic Party wants to have America be a socialist country.
Well, I think it's, first of all, I find this hilarious because this president seeks to expand government into the bodies of women. They seek to expand government to spontaneously generate detention centers all along our southern border. They seek to expand government in separating children from their parents. They seek to expand government in passing massive increases in military spending when we have no wars to fight or that we should be fighting. So this is not about who's expanding government. It's about who we're working for.
They're expanding
and we're
government.
choosing to work for the people of the United States.
Yeah. Okay, yes, sir.
So you talked about being 100% united, but today Speaker Pelosi appointed a
here we go.
that you were not on, and in her remarks today said she had not even read the resolution. So how sure are you that she's behind this effort?
I know. So Speaker Pelosi and I have spoken at length about climate. We share this priority. She did in fact invite me to be on the committee, and so I don't think that this is a snub. I don't think that this is any,
she pissed right in her
like
Cheerios
that.
there. She went over there with a bunch of millennials, protested in front of her office. So she's really starting to make some ripples in her own party here.
And
little
that
go-getter,
is,
hungry
right
little
now,
girl.
This legislative scope
Yeah,
is
and her
the
little
only
green
legislative
agenda.
scope that has been presented in this Congress.
As a follow-up, why did you decide not to serve on the committee?
I think that, and again, I think I serve on the Environmental Subcommittee of Oversight. I'm on 4 subcommittees. We're doing this. And additionally, the Select Committee is an investigatory body, and I'm really excited to support Representative Castor in her agenda in holding these hearings in frontline communities. And we also have, so they're tackling the investigative piece, and right now we're tackling the legislative piece. I'm very
What a
very,
bunch of
excited
nonsense
about
that
the
is. Unbelievable.
Could you turn
These folks have just come completely unglued. They're pushing an agenda, and they really have nothing but a couple little generalities. They're not divulging any of the details. They're making blind claims that it's going to have some kind of economic value, and it's not. It's a giant white elephant. It's gonna cost so much to institute this stuff, and they're talking about an entire shift. All right, an entire shift in an economy to take us off from fossil fuels entirely and only have green renewables, and to do it in 12 years is ridiculous. One of the things that I'd like our hungry little congresswoman to do is maybe she should go and take a look at just what has happened to those creative minds out there that have tried to solve our energy problem. All right, here's what I think she's going to find is that these entrepreneurs have largely been suppressed. I know personally of an instance where someone who created a really good idea and tried to patent it, to roll it out for general use. Here's a guy that had power for his house. Actually, it started out as power for his vehicle. Ended up power for his house. It was run through magnets. All right? He was able, once this motor got going, the only time he needed an outside source of power was just to get it going. Once it got up to a certain number of RPMs, this thing would actually run itself and generate power. So he was generating power with zero emissions, basically his home off the grid. And when he tried to patent protect it, when he thought he had a good commercial consumer model, that was it, boy. He kicked his door down, gagged him right up. But that's what's happened. My grandfather, one of his childhood friends, a brilliant guy with motors, he had a motor that would get, it was like a motorcycle. It was a car that got the type of miles per gallon like a motorcycle. And the same thing, Detroit bought him out, government bought him out, gagged him. He couldn't make any, couldn't create any, release it anywhere. And it was all because they have monopolized
Can I say something,
energy.
please?
anyways, we're gonna wait here. A couple of shout outs while we're waiting is Camp Constitution. I mentioned that earlier. This is a great place to bring your kids if you've got kids. If you don't and you would like to get a subscription, what do they call it? Anyways, you can contact Hal Shurtleff, and he will give a certificate for another kid. You know, if you know a family who might not be able to afford it, and you know, you got a kid that could really use a good wholesome week at camp, you just can't beat Camp Constitution. So campconstitution.org is a website. Be able to get all kinds of updates and things like that on what's going on, who the guests are going to be up there. They do a lot of field trips, very historically rich, and always a good time. So I think we got our interviewers calling in here, and just give a quick introduction. As I mentioned in the primer, our guest interview tonight is actually someone we were involved with as we created the Good Guys with Guns, a documentary that just came out and was released last year. As many of you know, it was filmed in part at last year's Flag Day Second Amendment rally. Well, I stayed in touch with James Yeager, who was the film producer, and we got talking. I was paying attention to some of the polls that he was doing as this was evolving, and he was talking to some of his underwriters, fans of his past documentaries, and asking them, what does America need to know? What should the topic of the next documentary be? And I was watching as all the information was coming in, and people were giving their ideas. And oddly enough, almost all of the individual ideas kind of came under this one umbrella, which happened to be among the most popular and the most often recommended, which was Agenda 21. So tonight, from Matrix Entertainment, we've got James Yeager with us. James, can you hear us, brother?
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me on. Great to be here.
How are you?
All right. Good to have you with us.
How are you?
I'm going to mention just a few of the past documentaries you've done, and let me know if I miss any here. Good Guys with Guns, as I said, is one that was just released. Mainstream, I believe, was the one before that. Folks would probably remember Molon Labe, Cultural Marxism, Original Intent, Spoiler, Fiat Empire, and one of my buddy's favorites is Midnight Ride. Oh, man, you've been a busy guy. You want to tell us about your new project and how that got inspired?
Yeah, you know the project better than me. I can never remember the names of half of these things because, let's see, we started making documentaries starting in 2005. We made Fiat Empire, addressing the Federal Reserve System, and then we started addressing the Constitution on certain things that they weren't following, and what I mean by that is our entrenched Congress and so on and so forth. And then we came to the conclusion, well, gee, if they're not following this and that about money, and the money's not backed by gold, they must be not following other things in the Constitution. So that led to like 5 other movies. We did not follow anything in the Constitution. So, as you mentioned, we just got through our third gun movie. I like to call them gun movies. They're the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
The first one talks about keeping and bearing, why we keep and bear, come and get them. And then the last one is Good Guys with Guns, the idea, the revolutionary idea, amazing idea that maybe people can self-protect themselves. This never occurred to a lot of people out there. So we're now on this new one, Unsustainable, because as Dave said, it looks like a lot of people have their minds on this Agenda 21, and nobody knows what it is.
Yeah. Now, it's my experience that I've gone out and talked about this and lectured quite frequently in the past few years, is that when you don't have enough time, if you bump into someone, a couple of people, and you try to communicate this in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You cannot do it without sounding like you're Looney Tunes. Given ample enough time, and usually our lectures are about 2 hours, and, we've never failed to educate a room full of people. I mean, the only time, and it was a reporter for Esquire, he was there to do a hit piece, and he did. And he was the only one that I can recall of all the lectures that we've done where, we couldn't turn a whole room full.
Yeah, it's a hard subject to put one's mind around in just a sentence or two. But I actually have been doing some research because, like a lot of other people, I was pretty delinquent in my knowledge of this subject. So I've been looking at the material on the net. There's scores, maybe even hundreds of YouTube videos. There's books out there, and the information is scattered all over the place. But the one thing that distinguishes this whole thing from a conspiracy theory is you can actually go on the internet and read the 350-page document called Agenda 21.
Yeah.
Right there for you to read.
Yeah, I challenge people to go in there and pick out individual chapters. 36 is basically Common Core. You can pick out chapters and point them in a direction where they can find paperwork right in their own town hall that originated from there.
Yes, exactly. So you can go to this 30-page document and you can find exact chapters. And as I was reading the thing, I'm like, I have nothing better to do with my time. I'm reading this damn thing. 350 times per, almost once per page, a couple of words come up. Unsustainable development.
Yeah.
Or sustainable development, sustainable development. And this term keeps coming up over and over and over. So basically, I can basically say this is what Agenda 21 is about. A bunch of rich people and entities simply want to inventory all of the land, all of the water, all of the minerals, all of the plants, all of the animals, all of the building projects in development, and all of the human beings on the planet Earth, and put them under a one world global management system.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. So basically they're saying that we can't continue on warming up the planet. That is unsustainable.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
They want to put together a global government so that they can manage everything and give us sustainable development. Well, I think a global government is more unsustainable than a planet that could be managed by other means.
Oh, absolutely. You see, they've taken, because, science is science. There's good science and there's junk science. And they've had the ability for quite some time to be able to study long-term cycles, and that's the difference between climate and weather. Weather is, short-term variations, and climate is long-term patterns. Once you know what that long-term pattern is, government can immediately roll out the propaganda machine, start installing fear, and begin legislating to it. They politicize and monetize it. And that's precisely the pattern that we've seen develop. They're creating regulations and carbon taxes to monetize it. So it's a predictable long-term cycle that government is using. They're taking full advantage, and as usual, the American people, who are largely asleep at the wheel, are allowing themselves to be swayed by emotion. They're not looking at the facts. It's like Al Gore with his documentary he put out a number of years ago. His assumption was that our people were causing the planet to heat up, and it was evident in the CO2 that we saw. And basically, when he put that graph out there that the CO2 that we created caused temperature to go up, a lot of people looked at that and they were shocked. But in reality, it's the other way around. CO2 is liberated through temperature change. So it was the climate that changed, and then the CO2 reacted. So what he showed on the graph really was a bold-faced lie. All right,
Right,
you got
exactly.
it exactly backwards.
Well, yeah, you got that's a very good point you just brought up, because very few people have gotten that point. That's exactly it. Is the sun heating up the earth, thus causing the CO2 to rise, or is the CO2 rising, thus causing the heat to rise? But here's the thing. Here's the killer, David. There's scientists on both sides of this issue. Okay, you can buy a scientist on any side of the issue.
Yeah.
But the one scientist that I put pretty much most of my faith in is a rocket scientist by the name of Robert Zubrin. You've heard the old saying, it's not brain surgery or rocket science. Well, this guy's a rocket scientist, and all you have to do is read one of his 10 books on colonizing Mars, and you realize that this guy is the smartest man that has ever lived on the planet Earth. And the reason I say that is because he's figured out a way of colonizing Mars with off-the-shelf technology and moving another branch of humanity over to Mars. It's all laid out in his book, A Case for Mars and Entering Space. Okay, that said, here's the point. Zubrin basically says global warming is good. In other words, global warming has made the planet Earth much, much more fertile. The CO2 has caused the growing seasons to increase all over the world.
Really?
There's more food. The very thing that globalists are trying to fight, starvation and hunger, is being solved by global warming. So global warming is great. It's good. And also, not only that, Zubrin says we've had global warming much worse than anything Al Gore pointed out to many times in the past.
Yeah. And, you know, they can't deny the fact as they measure temperatures on other planets. You know, they're going up and you know, they're tracking each other. It's not just getting warmer here on Earth where people are. It's getting...
that's why the sun, it indicates the sun is warming up the solar system.
Sure. It's got cycles as well. Everything. It's all about cycles. I've said, repeated this a number of times, the most healthiest environments are those that have almost continuous flux. You know, no static environment is healthy, or at least remains healthy for a notable amount of time. So this is the same thing. As climate changes, we just got to really accept the reality that it is. The only thing we should be fearful of is that we now have a very aggressive government that thinks it can alter the climate, that is actively out there trying to change what is a natural cycle that pre-existed, certainly government and society as we know it. That's what scares me. The things they're spraying in the air, the policies they're doing right now that'll kill capitalism. It's a huge dragnet. And getting back to your documentary here, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. This is going to be a time to educate. It's an opportunity to educate. As they bring out this Green New Deal, I don't know how they can avoid people like you, people like myself, people like my listeners, from going out there and using it as a vehicle to educate. Do you think that's possible here, that we can catch some of their momentum and use it against them?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that we were going to discuss the Green New Deal, and I managed to get the actual document, which is the document that they wrote and submitted to Congress, and it's not that long, and I read it. And, you know, I want to say, you know, environmental concern is good. There's a lot of stuff that's in Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, in this Green New Deal that is good. You know, you don't want to throw your trash and milk cartons out the car window and put out your cigarette butts on, you know, on tablecloths. There's a lot of good stuff in concern for the environment, and we should all be good shepherds of the environment.
Correct.
But the problem is you've got these psychopaths in government that are trying to monetize this whole thing. They're trying to scare everybody about ruining the planet so that they can charge a global carbon tax to everybody. That's what's wrong, and justify a one-world totalitarian government to manage everybody. So they're basically trying to herd us all into a management bin in the name of the idea that we're destroying our planet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and meanwhile, people are getting rich. This is, this is going to fill the pockets as you get to learn more and more about how these guys work once they go through your regional planning commissions, the way the grants are shaped as they come into your communities. You opt in to deeper and deeper levels of greenness. All right, they kind of bait a hook and throw it out there and kind of get you on board. And then they say, oh, boy, well, we could get you some more grant money in this particular area if you just opt in a little bit deeper. So as they go deeper into the weeds, they throw a little bit more grant money at you. But none of this money goes into your community and shapes it as the people need. You know, there's no vacuums out there. If there's a need for a particular business, you know, there's entrepreneurs and capitalists out there that are going to say, wait a minute, your town needs a cobbler. Your town needs a machinist. And that will be filled. People will fill that need just because capitalism works. And here, as you opt into deeper levels of greenness, you'll find that they actually have what's called preferred developers. These are green certified. So you can't, if you get a community that is a green community, for example, and requires the new stretch code and that all work be done by preferred developers, this is a big, big step to fascism. This is a relationship that's not supposed to exist between government and the business world.
Right, yes. And you hit the nail on the head again with this grant money. This is how they're vicing their way in. The federal government offers all this grant money to the local governments, telling them how to spruce up their schools and telling them how to spruce up their environment. And then they get everybody basically under the dictates of Agenda 21, and if they don't follow through at the local level, they withdraw the grant money.
Yeah.
So that's how they're doing it. This whole plan started out in 1976 with the Vancouver Plan of Action. Then it morphed into the 1987 Brundtland Report, and then that became the Rio Plan, the Agenda 21 in 1992. And then we had Executive Order 12852 was issued by Bush. And Bush and Clinton in 99 basically embedded Agenda 21 principles into all federal agencies. So we can thank Clinton and Bush for embedding this Agenda 21 into our federal government, the executive order making the United States signatory to Agenda 21, and this is how they're able to use the law, quote unquote, to force all these federal grants down to the states and everybody. So what we have to do is we've got to reverse. Trump's got to rescind Executive Order 12852.
Yeah, and those are things that he can do readily. He doesn't need a huge congressional majority to do these things. Those things that were done by executive fiat, he can undo through executive fiat.
Exactly. And those things that were done by Congress, morons, we can undo with Congress. The problem with Congress is it's entrenched. That gets us back to the deep state. That's why I say a lot of people are screaming for term limits. We need to have term limits where these bastards are thrown out after at least 4 or 8 years. We did it for the presidency. We should not have these congressmen in there for 4, 8, 10, 50, 100, 2,000, 3,000 years.
Yeah, but I have swung both ways on this one. Term limits right now, because of the situation that we're in, seems like a really good idea. But at the same time, if the system worked, if it actually worked, you wouldn't need term limits. Every election cycle is a term limit. But we got dirty money that's involved in politics, gerrymandering of the districts, and this is an Agenda 21 item, this open borders thing. We have illegal immigrants coming into our country. They're attracted to these areas where you've got sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. And when that happens, they come into a community, first to the sanctuary city, and they take the census.
Oh, no.
You have money that comes in, grant money will flood into these areas that are progressive strongholds at the time, obviously. The districts will be gerrymandered. The money that comes in will be used to strengthen and expand that progressivism So there's a actual, there's a number of dangers to the illegals being in this country, and one of them is how that the money moves, the gerrymandering of the districts. There's areas we'll never get back again because of the massive numbers that are flooding into this country, especially if they're allowed to continue.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned that the term limit cuts both ways. Yeah, everybody says they'd love the term limits to get rid of all the congressmen they don't like. But then as soon as you get a Ron Paul in there,
right,
you don't want him to go. Okay, so that's the dilemma.
Yeah.
That's the dilemma. But here's the thing. I've written a bunch of articles about term limits. They're all up at YagerResearchInstitute.org for anybody that likes to see them. Trying to rationalize them on a Ben Franklin balance sheet of pros and cons. And even though there are cons, you can get a bunch of great congressmen in there and then have to throw them out after 2 terms. I think the pros outweigh the cons, and also a term-limited Congress would align with the founders' intent more. The only reason they didn't put term limits on everybody back when they wrote the Constitution is because it was a wilderness and it took a long time to get your covered wagon to Washington to serve. So they didn't want to put any kind of restrictions on citizens serving in the government. So eventually they put them on the presidency, but they haven't put them on the Congress yet. Okay, it's only a matter of time before we are going to place them on the Congress. But the reason they did not want them is so they didn't want to discourage citizens from getting to Washington and being kicked out after a term or 2. So the problem is we've gone too far. The congressmen get entrenched. They start to bribe. They start to accept gerrymandering. They start to become buddies, and they do the vote swapping, and you name it. And we don't get representative democracy.
Yeah.
And these people are supposed to represent the people, the changing population. How can a man who's been in Congress for 40 or 50 years represent the changing population?
Yeah.
They can't.
Yeah, they like to think they do. And, the longer they're in there, because this is the thing, is who is swaying them? Where are they getting the most pressure? What's that old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease? Well, who is in that congressperson's ear and knocking on their door? That's going to be the way they go. And, we the people have gotten very apathetic. When we're not a presence in that state house, when we're not a presence in their district offices, it constantly telling them, like this Green New Deal, the press conference that Cortez had, she had 2 Massachusetts representatives there. We had Jim McGovern and Ed Markey, 2 of the biggest, greenest commies that the Massachusetts could produce, are
they
right
sure
there
are.
front and center. And I like to know why we are. I hope the people in this state don't sit in silence on this. I like to think we're going to be able to be knocking on their door pretty regular and pretty soon, as this is a horrible idea, and they do not speak for the people. Our property rights out here have been eviscerated.
Right, but here this is kind of a perfect example to rationalize the idea of term limits. This Cortez woman is brand new, arrived in Congress. So from the Democrats' point of view, she's applying the short-term point of view philosophy to this whole thing. She's moved into Congress, and she's making change that all those encrusted Democrats haven't made. And she may find a new win for the Democrats. And, maybe we don't like it on the conservative side, but this is actually demonstrating that new blood changes Congress. Now, she's in there. If we had some new blood that came in and said, well, let's get rid of the taxes on gold and silver transactions, and let's make change the laws for legal tender laws, so you can pay your debts, public and private, in gold or silver. Well, we would be able to get those votes passed by new people in Congress, freshmen and sophomores in Congress, because they would not be as entrenched with the money powers. It takes a little while to get the relationships with all the donors and the big money people on K Street.
Oh,
if you're only in Congress for like 4 years or 6 years, you're never going to get those connections. So this insanity of Citizens United will never be able to take hold.
Right. Yeah, corruption takes time, and it's one of the dangers of corruption is that once you acknowledge that it may be present, if you do not snuff it out, it gets worse. They corrupt people at all levels. Just someone who's been corrupted by, a couple $1,000s, to them is a blemish and an embarrassment, and they don't want to be outed, and they will cover and protect anyone around them. It's why the Clintons, rather than rotting in a jail, they are protected by a vast network of people that they corrupted along the way. It keeps them quiet, and it becomes a self-supporting scourge.
Right, exactly. And if you can be in Congress indefinitely, you can set up the criminal career indefinitely. You've got no stops, no ends in sight. It goes on forever. If they were in Congress for 2 to 6 years and that's it, they're out.
Yeah.
Then they're going to spend all their attention on governing prudently rather than establishing connections so that they can take, payola.
Yeah. Well, here, this whole green nonsense, it is a huge restructuring. It is a top-down engineering of the economy. This is going to be expensive. Businesses are going to go out of business, and their preferred businesses will thrive if the people don't revolt and put the brakes on. Otherwise, they're just going to keep printing the money. Unless they run out of paper or ink, government's just going to keep printing money for them.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they basically are trying to manage more than just the ecology. Yeah. There's some people out there on the net that are talking about this whole thing, and one of them says that it's all about economy, ecology, and social equity. And social equity is actually about bringing down portions of the developed world, like nations of the United States. Instead of bringing everybody up to our level of standard of living, they want to bring the rest of the world up at our expense. They want to bring us down.
Yeah,
so the whole thing's insane.
Yeah, and
they get into this stuff where they're burning down forests and everything, allegedly.
Yeah, and they keep inventing terms, and we wind up getting lured in and talking under those terms. They talk about social justice, economic justice, environmental justice. There's no such thing. They made those words up. Those are socialist terms. There's only regular justice, blind justice.
That's right. Yep, they're trying to expand the concept of rights into anything and everything. You have a right to this, a right to Mercedes-Benz, a right to education, a right to health care, a right to, a new diamond ring once a month, a right to airplanes.
Well,
I'll stand by rights.
Well, with every right,
liberty, life, and all that crap, right?
Yeah. Who needs that?
I want a new Corvette, man.
Yeah, sure. You got the right to that, right? Well,
everybody has a right.
Every time they create a right, or they, in this term, a certain type of justice, well, that's got to be defined. Someone has got to define that. So, I mean, who is capable and righteous enough in our government to go through and determine what social justice really is? What is a social injustice? I know I've heard some crazy rantings out there of things that people are calling social injustices. People are getting arrested for referring to a male as a male when he feels like a female, or like a non-binary, or whatever they call themselves. Pronoun problems will get you thrown in jail these days because of what these people feel is a social injustice. It's craziness. But the cost upon the people is undeniable. And when this, if it ever gets through and starts trickling in, I mean, we've got things now that have been instituted in our not-too-distant past that we're currently paying for and haven't even felt the total repercussions of yet. This is a massive, expensive proposal that they're floating out there. I think I heard 60-70% tax. Isn't that what she called for? And getting rid of cows, yes. Getting rid of cars.
Yeah, something like that. I had my annual talk with Ed Griffin about a week ago, I usually have a chat with him maybe once or twice a year. And whenever we're starting a new film project, I give Ed a call and say, what needs to be covered, Ed? Where's the world going, and so on. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he said to me about this, he said, absolutely do a movie on Agenda 21. Two thumbs up on that. And he
excellent.
Said, spend 90% of the movie telling people what is the philosophy behind Agenda 21, and only 10% of the movie on what it is. In other words, don't get into all the documents signed and all this crap. He said, tell them why the why of Agenda 20, not what it is, but why it is. And Ed talks about the concept of collectivism versus individualism. And this relates to the point you just made, David, that there's some people out there that basically live for the collective. Everything to them is the group, the government. And to them they want to sacrifice the individual to the group because the greater good is greater than the individual. If you have a strong group, then you have everything. But the way Ed looks at it, and the way the freedom lover, the people that believe in individual freedom and liberty, if you strengthen the individual, and then you have a group made up of individuals that are strong, you get a stronger group. If you go and try to strengthen the group, you get your individuals atrophy. Mm. So that's what we have. We have a government full of atrophied people to the degree they're on the dole, to the degree they're not out there working hard, improving their abilities, competing with each other, and making America great.
Yeah.
Hey, that would be a good log line, wouldn't it? We should use that.
Yeah, indeed. Now, the thing with collectivism is, it'd be impossible for everybody, because, everybody's part of this. That's the dream. Everyone gets to dream their utopian dreams. But not everyone gets to speak. Very few, if any, get to speak. So the system that has gotten us to the point that we are now is one where the ones that speak for the people are assigned stakeholders. Your environmental interest, we understand you. We're going to be, the land trust community may be your environmental stakeholders that speak for your environmental needs, whims, and wants. A chamber of commerce or some non-profit organization or some layer of bureaucracy will step in and speak for your economic values. So the collective in the decision-making process doesn't get to speak. Assigned stakeholders do. And they've already decided what is the way forward. They reverse engineer it, and they present it in a way that they make the people think it's their idea.
Right. Yeah, they're using smokestack thinking for most of this stuff. It's zero-sum game. I don't know, David, you might call me crazy, but I think that when you look out there at the stars in the universe and God's creation, you can't help wondering if it isn't infinite, okay?
Correct.
And I'm willing to bet it is infinite, that there's no limit to the amount of material resources, not only on this world, but all throughout the solar system and the galaxy. And here we are, Homo sapiens, creatures stuck on this planet, spending $700 billion a year making weapons and war, right? And now this year, $720 billion, according to the president last night, 2 nights ago. Why can't we take some of this money and put it into developing solar power and fusion?
Oh yeah,
if we develop solar power and fusion, we would have 1 gallon of water would be the equivalent of 375 gallons of gasoline.
Yeah, I mean both hydrogen and oxygen are.
That's right. We would solve our energy problems for the next 3 billion years on the planet Earth.
Yeah, that much independence is a complete loss of control. So that's we got a system that whatever is rolled out, I don't see it being. If someone discovered free energy, which I think it probably already have, but let's say that someone tomorrow comes out and says, hey, look at this, I figured out a way we can extract energy right from the atmosphere, put a little generator right in your yard like a central air unit, and power all your houses. And the government would not allow that. Not unless they somehow got in the way of the money stream. It's like the smart meters. The people that got those awful things on their house, when they go to the electric company and say, hey, this is a violation of my Fourth Amendment, this has got health impacts that you did not disclose, I said, I want this out of here. I want an analog. And they'll try and trick you into the language so you're opting out. Because if you say, yeah, I'm opting out, it's their opt-out program. Well, their opt-out program says that you got to pay them monthly. You get charged a huge fee to come and remove the meter that they illegally put on there. So you're not opting out. You're basically telling them you are revoking any implied consent to violate your rights. But, they've got to monetize it. Even when you don't want anything to do with their newest flavor of the day, they'll try to get you in an opt-out contract. So they've got to control it. That's the thing is I don't think we'll ever see food production in this country like we used to. We used to be the breadbasket of the world, and now we're a net importer of food just to keep ourselves alive. So that control has been seized from us. We can't feed ourselves. Energy, the same thing. We've got to deregulate, get government out of the way. And I think the best way forward from an energy perspective is to cut the brilliant minds and the entrepreneurs loose. The best of solar, the best of hydro, it will come about because there is no vacuums. If you truly believe in a free and open market, there's no vacuums that exist. We need energy. People don't want to pay $3 and $4 a gallon for gas. So I know there's creative people out there that probably already have, like I said, jumped at the opportunity to create something that's a net benefit to man. You just got to get government out of the way.
Right. Well, it's here right now. Solar is here. Sustainable solar is here. The psychiatrist across the hallway in the building I work is gone. Her office is totally gone. And she basically told me that her husband's a developer, and he built her a house out in the country. They put solar panels made by Tesla, Elon Musk, right up on their roof. They put 2 giant Tesla batteries in the garage. They went out and bought a Tesla, the new Tesla, for something like, I think they're down to 30 or 40,000.
Wow.
And she said their 2 batteries basically suck the sunlight off the roof. They run the whole house, and then they plug the car into the batteries at night, and it generates the car. So they are totally off the grid.
Ooh, nice.
Said, quote unquote.
Nice.
And they did it for almost nothing. Of course, her husband's a developer, as I mentioned, so he was able to do the building.
Cool.
But the point is,
yep,
they're gone. She's gone from her office. That office is empty. She's living off the grid now.
Wow.
And anybody can do that right now. Elon Musk is making it possible. So there's no excuse for people to be paying their Pico bills or their electric bills. And as far as, the guy in the garage that invents cold fusion and all that, yeah, the men in black are said to come in and shut it down, shut your meter down, et cetera, et cetera. But the way we crack this nut is by putting out stories that are success stories of people that are already doing it and opening up the floodgates and getting people crazy about this. And then the government, no government on earth, not even 195 of them, can stop an idea whose time has come.
Yeah, and that's Ed Griffin's favorite tagline right there, is when people have had enough, the information's out there, the internet being what it is, the genie is out of the bottle. There's people across the country that do understand this stuff, and it's a matter of critical mass. When people are ready to hear this and the time for this message is there, we've got to always be ready and pressing truth forward. And that's really all this is. That's the good thing about what I do and why I feel fulfilled in it, is that I do not have to invent or fabricate or lie about anything. I really don't. I just got to take the facts that are there and, it's shining some light on them. Sometimes it's just the order in which these things happen. Other times people really just don't recognize when this slips into their town, the language that's used. But boy, I tell you, you've got an opportunity with this documentary coming up. you're going to have that ample time. So I'm really excited about this.
Amen.
And this could be that, that little brush fire of liberty that causes some sincere pushback, because it is, in my estimation, a very apolitical issue. I know regular, normal Democrats and any political flavor you like, they kind of do enjoy their property rights. They like to be able to, build a house the way they want, live the way they want, and, those people are going to be there. I think they're going to be a receptive audience.
Yeah. Well, getting back to a point that you made a few minutes ago, even these little films and independent shows, radio shows, TV shows, if we all work together, they can get out. The word gets out because people forward things and you get the word of mouth, the grassroots. So even though the mainstream media is not going to help us with this movie, you're not going to see this movie, on Fox or CNN or MSNBC. In fact, we made a 4-part miniseries explaining exactly why called mainstream. Even though none of this stuff is going to be seen on the network, if your viewers go to, may I say a URL on the show?
Yeah, absolutely.
If your viewers go to homevideo.net, they can watch all 9 of the movies we made for free. We put them all up for free because we feel it's more important to get the word out to the public. And because the movies are donor financed, we can put them up for free. These other producers that make movies with equity investors, the investors won't demand their money back before they'll release the film. So I'll tell you, a lot more people will watch a film for free and are able to than a film that costs $19.50.
Yeah.
So that's why we only do donor financing and we put them up for free. But anyway, the point I wanted to make was if you go to homevideo.net and watch a movie called Original Intent, which we put out, I think it was around 2007, just before the financial crash. Ron Paul's in it, Pat Buchanan's in it, Edwin Vieira, G. Griffin, and Ted Baer. And Ron Paul's predicting the crash of 2008 in this movie.
Wow.
If you watch this movie, you will see that almost everything in Trump's platform is in this movie.
Wow.
Which means, and the movie was downloaded over the course of the last 15 years by about 3 million people. Little by little, they downloaded it. If you watch it, you will see Trump's platform almost itemized right down the line, NAFTA. Get rid of NAFTA, right there in the movie. And so this proves that little tiny grassroots types of movies and books and lectures and things can get out there and percolate throughout the environment and cause change.
Yeah, and people felt the pinch there. That was a good timing there with Dr. Paul, is people started feeling the pinch, man, when that housing bubble burst. Normal middle-class people who are normally go through life in blissful ignorance all of a sudden got pinched really bad. And there was a big awakening that happened about that time. Would you agree?
Yeah, he sits right there on screen and he says, I think we have an unsustainable housing bubble, and he puts up a graph. This is in 2007. I think we're going to have a crash, everybody. But, of course, this is just a documentary film made by an unknown independent film producer. Unknown congressman saying this. Nobody knew who Ron Paul was.
Yeah, I've been following him since the 80s.
Nobody knew who he was.
Oh, I've been a fan of his since the late 80s. He was a big Reagan fan himself, and yeah, he was he used to be pretty full of spunk. I watched some older videos of him when he was more of a classic libertarian, and boy, oh boy, he was full of fire.
Yeah, well, people like you would know who he was because you were paying attention, but your average run-of-the-mill human being citizen, they had no inkling who he was until he basically started running for president, and basically Fiat Empire went viral because everybody was crazed out about the idea that the Federal Reserve is a private business. They couldn't believe that. So And Ron Paul sits there right on screen saying it. Oh, my God, a congressman is telling me that the Federal Reserve is a private business, not a government agency.
Yeah.
So the left totally freaked out over that because the left, they can't bash big bad corporations enough. The left bashes all the big bad corporations, and the right bashes the big bad government. It's like a big running theme. To the liberals, the corporations are the evil, empire. And to the conservatives, the government is the evil empire.
Yeah, and as long as...
Since I am in neither party, I hate the Democrats and the Republicans equally. I think you say that.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you now on that.
The movie was called Original Intent, How the Democratic and Republican Parties Are Destroying America, or it's destroying the middle class.
Yeah,
right?
It's that polarization. They create warring factions. It's so polarized that, and this is what bothers me now, is I hear every once in a while, maybe 10 or 20% of what a Democrat might say. I say, hey, you know what? That makes sense. I agree with that. But because it came from a Democrat, a Republican feels compelled to oppose it, and vice versa. It's that polarized. It ain't possible that, a good idea might actually slip in there once in a while. But they've got us horribly divided as a nation. People can't go out to a store or go out in public without being treated based on their clothing. If you're wearing the wrong hat or a Trump T-shirt or something like that, it's that polarizing. It's going to be hard getting the people together. The radicals in both sides, I think we have got to just be dismissive of and hope that those that are in the middle, those normal Democrats that exist, those classic conservatives that exist, that have been, for lack of a better word, steamrolled by their party apparatus, and appeal to the common sense in them. Common sense will prevail.
Yeah, exactly. It's really ridiculous to think that one half of the political spectrum have all the answers. To say the Democrats have all the answers or the Republicans have all the answers. Both sides of the political spectrum have some answers, and you should pick the best answers from both sides. Ultimately, the far left and the far right are both totalitarian ideologies. Because the far left, far left Democrats are basically Marxists and communists. That's a totalitarian ideology. And then far right conservatives are, fascists.
Yeah.
Fascism's a totalitarian. So really, the Democratic and the Republicans are on the same side of the spectrum. They're both, in their extreme, they're both totalitarian.
Yeah.
And then the real political spectrum is a spectrum between total government on one extreme and no government on the other extreme. Anarchy.
Yeah, absolutely. Both extremes are not well at all. Total government and the total lack of government, you wind up with the same thing where violence is upon you. Because even the anarchist, you talk to 100 anarchists and you'll get 101 different definitions of what anarchy is based on their narrative. But, you'll get these people in that community where they'll figure it's a whole lot easier if I get together with 2 or 3 of my neighbors and we go over and just beat the hell out of you and take your stuff. It's a lot easier than going and working, because as we get to this rationing where, everyone is given their share, like paying the fair share of taxes, you get your fair share of food, your fair share of energy, and everyone's treated like a vassal. No one strives for greatness. No one has the potential to achieve greatness. You're issued your job. You can't work hard and grow out of it and seek prosperity in the system that's being proposed.
Absolutely. The totalitarians that are trying to destroy the United States, which is a limited government, right between totalitarianism on the left and anarchy on the right, they wanted a limited government by sitting there and pitting us against each other. The Democrats and Republicans, they're trying to divide and conquer us. They're trying to destroy us from within through this, technique of getting us, mad at each other just because we're a Democrat or a Republican. When really, Democrats and Republicans, in their extreme forms, are the same bedfolk. They're all totalitarian.
Yeah.
So Americans need to wake up and stop fighting each other, stop being so politically correct of each other, and realize who the true enemy is. The true enemy is the globalists that want to turn the United States into a province of their one world government.
Correct.
Now, do you think you'll be able to bring attention, excuse me, to the issues with your audience in this film?
Well, you saw the issues that people are interested in the survey, Dave.
Yeah.
And, we're going to go right down those issues and incorporate as many of them as we can in this movie, because a lot of these issues are related. Agenda 21 was the top issue. Then just below that was illegal immigration, globalist agenda, what happened to the America we grew up in, third world invasion of the West, deep state, dumbing down the population, Second Amendment, socialism, Constitution 101.
Yeah.
So, we'll do the best we can. The one thing I want to do is try to make a film that we can speak to some of the progressives, the reasonable ones, the ones that, like you said earlier, that don't want their stuff taken away from them.
Yeah.
There's got to be a progressive out there that loves his guitar.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll try to appeal to the people that walk around in these local governments.
Yeah, and show them a better way. I think there is a free market, a capitalist way to achieve many of the goals in a reasonable sense. Some of these things that are put out there are just unreasonable. They're assuming they know the problem and using the big hammer of government force to get them there. But I think there's, you got to give it back to the people. You got to give it back to the people and let the free market work. But there's people in Congress who I believe can be reached if you can show them a better way. They just got to be receptive to listen. I think we're now at a point where when you have a legislator who really just belittles you and refuses to listen, is a legislator you've identified for replacement. It's time to go.
Yeah. Well, if they're taking that money, I think when Citizens United came along and made it possible to set up these super PACs. First of all, I disagree that money is speech. They're considering money speech, so therefore free speech is free amounts of money. And I also consider that corporations are not people. Therefore, I don't think corporations should have to pay taxes. There should be no corporate tax.
Oh.
I don't know how many Congressmen you're going to get to vote on stuff like that. If these people are all entrenched in the deep state taking K Street donations, they're going to be kowtowing to their donors. I don't know, Dave. I'm really kind of pessimistic about Congress until these people can be thrown out. I say just keep flushing the toilet until all the brown color is gone. That's all term limits. Just when you don't see any more brown, you're going to suddenly start to get laws passed that everybody likes.
Well, maybe I should rephrase my question. What percentage of Congress do you think, if our Justice Department worked properly, would end up in jail? Because we'd probably clean house pretty good right there if we just put the criminals in jail.
Well, I posted a list on Facebook of the 21 or 35 people that need to go in Congress, okay? Some of them are gone already. One was McCain, and Flake, and of course there's, you know that there's the obvious ones, like who's the one that sits there with Pelosi? Schumer.
Schumer.
I mean, these guys have got to get. I could dig it up. I went down and you look at the ones that have been there for 30 years. They got to go. I think anyone that's been there for more than 8 years has got to go.
So right. I agreed. Yes.
I don't care if they're Ron Paul. I know Ron. I had a little email call. I said, Ron, I would have kicked you out after 8 years. And he said, yeah, good. I should have kicked myself out. He did kick himself out. He left and kicked himself back in, remember?
Yeah, he finally did retire. He was making some noises there for a while, and that was finally it. He retired.
No, he retired before he retired. He's retired. He's retired now. I was actually at his office the last day he was in Congress. And I interviewed him. I took a crew over there, and you wouldn't have believed the place. It was like you walk into the building. I forget what the name of the building is. and you're walking down these corridors, and they're all perfectly quiet. You turn the corner, another corner, dead, like you could hear echoes. Then you turn the third corner, and all of a sudden you hear screaming and people and burning balloons and parties and laughter and noise and jubilance. Well, that must be Ron's office.
Oh, man. I wish we had more legislators like him. I sure do miss him. His son Rand is better than most, but he's not his father.
Well, yeah, his dad's a tough act to follow, but I'm totally thrilled with what Trump's doing. I used to call it the Ron Paul revolution, along with a lot of other people, and I think that Trump deserves to have it shifted over to him, the Trump revolution.
I agree with you.
He keeps doing what he's going to keeps doing and starts wising up, to the mechanisms and the ways of D.C. He just did a great job with that little speech he just gave.
He did.
Yeah.
Absolutely did.
And if he pulls off a great summit with Kim Jong-un, man, I'd much rather be drinking buddies with Kim Jong-un than throwing nukes at each other, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Kim, have a beer, baby.
That's right.
Yeah, well, some diplomacy and dialogue is certainly preferred over violence. So I think it was a bad move by the press and for the Democrat side to give him grief about that. Just opening up a dialogue with these hostile entities is a step in the right direction. And when we look at how our military, its use has been abused by the executive for years, many presidencies have abused. I can't remember the last time we declared war in Congress. That just doesn't happen anymore. We've got troops all over this world that are, and the way they word it is very crafty, and they talk about defending America and American interests. What has...
I don't think war was declared since Korea, David.
Yeah.
I don't know what the exact war was, but it's somewhere back around Korea.
I believe you're right.
Declared in Korea?
Yeah, I believe you're right on that. And now, whatever is interesting in terms of our foreign policy, that is our interest. That's our country's official interest. And when you look at our foreign policy and what that actually is, it's horrendous. It's Orwellian. It's colonial. We're spending a lot of money, and there's also a great big black budget that exists, and our intelligence that exist only to destabilize other countries, funding bad guys. We talk a lot about how angry we are at the Clintons for not going to Benghazi and helping those guys out over there. And when you scratch below the surface a little bit, you find out that pretty much there's good odds they were over there running guns.
Yep, that's right.
So, they were doing something that they probably shouldn't have even been doing. The American people probably would not have funded and supported that effort. And it was all a cover-up. And Clinton, once they got in trouble, literally left them there to be killed.
And, it's really strange that most of the world's poppy comes from Afghanistan. Gee, I wonder why we're over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elizabeth?
Yeah.
It's like, the left funds the welfare state endlessly, and the right funds the warfare state endlessly.
Yeah.
And we got all this money being pissed down the drain. Meanwhile, the forest fires are running rampant all over California because they have stupid policies like no fire barriers, all that crap.
Yeah,
It's totally insane.
When you don't call those forests, they love to put a boundary around those. I had a big forest legacy initiative that the internationalists were pushing here in the Northeast not long ago. And, when you have a hands-off approach, your environmental program is basically hands off the environment, you are creating the exact conditions that went crazy out there. Those forest fires would never have been that way if loggers were in there culling and thinning and using the forest products. If you go back in time as far as you want, before we settled it, Native Americans were constantly roving around, culling the woods of that dead debris and undergrowth. And now the modern day policies of preservation put the very places in jeopardy that they fear-monger us into believing they would like to protect.
Right. Well, the problem is the forest policy runs against the Biodiversity and Wildlands Project, which is a project that humans are to be concentrated into what they call human settlement zones.
Yeah.
Consisting of these high-rise dwelling units, all these smart cities constructed along railroad tracks. This is no different than Auschwitz and Treblinka, right? Except they're moving people into these cities slowly, high, density cities where they can be surveilled. Of course, they had to have 9/11 to get the police state put into place so that they can build the smart cities. Now they're burning out all these people's houses. A lot of people think it's a conspiracy theory, but I'm beginning to think it's not a theory at all, that it may be actually happening. They've got these high concentrated weapons, pointing them down on these houses, burning them into ash. I mean, a forest fire burns at about 1,000 degrees. You got windshields all over cars that melt at like 2,500 degrees, burned and melted. You got dripping aluminum. That doesn't come from forest fires. You got the whole neighborhood is gone except for the trees.
Yeah, I saw that.
If you go to the website, there's unsustainable.us. We got a shot there. I'll tell you, Cynthia and Dave, this is suspicious to me.
Mm-hmm.
That these globalists are trying to get people out of these, areas so the animals can roam free in them.
If you look, there's an overlay there that Pelosi and Reid and those guys, they had laid out that transit corridor, and the footprint of those fires was uncanny how that matched up.
Uncanny. Absolutely.
You're exactly right. I bet you many of those homes are probably equipped with smart meters. There's those that have suggested that these things, even if it were just a malfunction, it's possible to backfeed a home and cause it, the entire wiring system to become ignite the home. And it looks like that. Those areas you were just describing.
There was a fire in Boston. There was three fires in three neighborhoods in Boston that started gas mains breaking, and that might have been triggered by smart meters. But aren't most of these homes in California, are they gas or are they electricity?
They're probably a mix, but I know that they were talking about, there was some footage that I saw that came out of there while the fires were still going on, and they were talking about a community that, like a subdivision, a very close community of residential homes that were largely equipped with smart meters.
Yeah, okay, so the smart meters are all over, so how does that explain the cars that are melted and turned upside down? How does that explain the trees are still up, the houses are turned into white powder? How does that resolve the idea that trees are burning from the inside out?
Yeah.
That can only happen with microwaves.
Right.
I don't think forest fires create microwaves, do they?
Now, last I checked, they didn't.
Last I checked, the trees were not microwave emitters.
Well,
unreal.
It's very suspicious.
Unreal, yet it is.
They've got a lot of mechanisms to push us out of the countryside. Water restrictions is another one. We watched as the most brilliant in our government got together to protect the Delta smelt and put, I don't know how many acres out of production. Killed farm after farm after farm with these horrible water restrictions, getting rid of dams. And part of the documents that you referenced earlier, the Biodiversity Assessment Report, Wildlands Project, they talk about unstraightening the rivers. Get rid of these dams and unstraighten the rivers. So. And
you know what? The globalists are aware that we're watching them closely, because if you study the Vancouver document, which came out in '76, and you read that, and then you read the Brundtland Report in '87, you will see they're kind of attenuating their language a little bit. You read the Agenda 21, they attenuate a little more. And this latest document with the Green New Deal, they actually say in there, people will be allowed to keep their houses and stuff. It's like they realize that we're reading into their document, they're going to confiscate personal property, our cars, move us into cities with smart cities and smart meters and freaking trains everywhere.
Yep.
Give the animals free run of the forest, like the bears. And while the humans get to roam, while the animals get to roam free in the corridors of glorious wilderness, the humans get to be imprisoned in these high-density cities, zoos, the globalists call smart cities.
Yeah, and it's like a boa constrictor. It just slowly gets tighter and tighter. They've gone a long way in already shuttling people out of the countryside, and it continues. They've pretty much laid out, phase 1 is your transit corridors. Because they can't do anything else till they got that. So they've established what those are. Here in Massachusetts, those of you that are listening from the Commonwealth, you only got to go and look at John Olver's new transit station up there in the Greenfield area. Goes along the Route 2 corridor, and that goes right up north from there. And you can follow where it goes and what connects to it prior to that if you go to America 2050. Check that website out. This is a gaggle of internationalists who have carved up this world into itty-bitty pieces and put a whole bunch of nice maps up there for you to see. And you will actually see the corridor that comes right up 91. It meets up the Route 2 corridor and heads north from there. Huge corridor that goes up the East Coast right into Canada.
And the corridors are actually all over the country. I mean, 90% of the land west of the halfway, the west, is owned by most of the federal government. So they've got it corridored off like you won't believe. Somehow the state, if you draw a line from Texas straight to Canada, almost all the land to the left is owned by the federal government, 90%. And if you draw a line to the right, almost all of that land is not owned by the federal government. For instance, Texas is the only state that owns. The federal government only owns 5% of Texas, but whereas in say Utah, they own 90% of Utah. So these corridors are being massively drawn all around the western United States. And I imagine the corridors are in Boston. There's a number of those red maps. I have been to this website you mentioned, America 2050. And Dave and Cynthia, it just seems to me that when you're dealing with multi-billionaires, and these people get together and they manage to pull off an explosion in the World Trade Center in the early 90s, then another explosion, airplanes flying into these buildings in 9/11. I wouldn't put anything past them. These people are perfectly capable of taking particle beam or microwave lasers, putting them in a satellite or airplane, flying over neighborhoods, and just pulverizing the neighborhoods. And they go, test works, Joe.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, they got plausible deniability in a lot of
we're dealing with, the sick psychopathic mentality, that we're dealing with. We're not going to stop at anything.
And I've asked myself before, I said, what if we, the people, ever got to that point where we were able to bring ourselves together, organize, and become effective in an actual threat to the powers that be? The tyranny that exists. I don't want to sound anti-government because I am not anti-government. I am anti-corruption and anti-tyranny. But I don't see them, if they were ever back so far into the corner, I don't see them giving. They'd rather burn the house down than
establish the militia system. This is why the militia system has to be reestablished.
That I agree with.
I mean, there's no way you can fight this federal power unless you reestablish the state militia systems. If we could somehow get cases going, and Edwin's idea is to use the militia of the states to investigate 9/11. Now, I'm talking about Edwin Vieira, for those of your viewers that are not familiar with him. Edwin Vieira is my producing partner, and a number of the movies were based on his books, inspired by his books. Sword and Sovereignty, By Tyranny on Necessity, and various other books.
Excellent.
Pieces of Eight, I think, is another book he did.
Pieces of Eight was on the Federal Reserve, right. And he basically maintains that the militia, when you're in the militia, you don't have to pick up your gun to go protect you. You can pick up your pencil or your computer. And the militia system could be manned with people that investigate things like 9/11, investigate, like the Paradise Fire and the Tubbs Fire and the fires in Boston.
Yeah.
And they would be a totally independent, people-oriented organization doing the investigation. Because remember, what does Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 say? It says the purposes of the militia are to repel invasions, suppress insurrections, and uphold the laws of the land, right?
Right.
Well, people bombing buildings and flying jets into buildings and firing particle beam lasers down there, that's not following the laws of the land.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of people clamoring for that stuff either.
Yeah, it's very unpopular. So the militia can Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, under that, can easily be called in to investigate all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because the federal government is just not the place to investigate it.
Yeah.
We get from background. We should have learned that in the John F. Kennedy assassination 101.
You're right. Yeah, you wouldn't ask the IRS to audit themselves, so we can't expect the government to
Good point.
keep corruption at bay either. So, it's an apathetic public. We've got the government we deserve, in my opinion. I point my finger at the bad guys there in Congress and in the government layer, but the rest of the fingers are pointing back at us. We allowed it.
I totally agree. And you know what? I say NAFTA. It took us 30 years to wake up to NAFTA. Oh, your job's gone, your house is gone, your factories are gone. 50,000 of your factories are gone, and you're sitting there, twiddling your thumbs for 30 years.
Yeah.
Well, if you lost it all, you deserve to have lost it.
Yeah, I came from a family of machinists. My father, grandfather, uncles, great-uncles, the largest majority of them worked in machine shops, and you're hard-pressed to find one around here anymore. There's a couple of them around, but it is nothing like it used to be. There used to be a machine shop in almost every city and town around here. Definitely the cities were full of them, but even the towns that I grew up in had a quite large machine shop there. All gone.
Absolutely, and where I'm calling from right now is near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. We used to have Bethlehem Steel, Phoenix Steel, National Rolling Mills. We had, 4, 5, 6 huge steel mills, and I mean huge. They're all gone. There's condos in Phoenixville Steel right now.
Wow. Yeah, they're turning them into a lot of these new village-style, smart growth, mixed-use type of things, where they have little boutique stores in the bottom, stack them and pack them, low-income living cubicles in the middle, But, yeah, a lot of the old mill towns, that's what these buildings are being targeted for green redevelopment. And that's what they're turning into. What used to be a factory that employed hundreds or even thousands of people is now going to be low-income living cubicles for the vassals, the ones that can no longer afford a single-family home in the countryside, can't afford that car. Well, we're going to give you a living cubicle in an old factory.
Ooh, that happens a lot.
Right next to a bike lane.
Markel toilet paper factory. They made apartments out of that place in South Hadley, Massachusetts. Yeah.
Yep. That's
just one place. Yep.
Right. And Michael Moore tried to warn us about this in 1990. He made a movie called Roger and Me.
Oh yeah.
Where did you guys see that movie?
I didn't see that one. No.
Huh.
Well, this is the #1 movie that's launched Michael Moore, okay? Now, he's a lefty filmmaker, right?
Correct.
You've got Michael Moore on the left and Jeanette D'Souza on the right, okay?
Yeah.
Moore makes this movie where he's tracking down Roger Smith, the head of GM, and asking him, why are you moving all the automobile plants out of Flint, Michigan? Mm-hmm. So the movie is picked up by the left because it champions the worker. And Michael Moore becomes a superstar filmmaker, a little darling of the left. Yeah. One of his latest films being, Capitalism, a love story. So anyway, but the point is, Michael did something right in that he did explicate the NAFTA, problem.
Yeah. Right. Uh-huh.
And
Interesting.
I really invite you to watch this film. He's got a 16-millimeter crew, and he's wandering around trying to find Roger Moore all over the United States, and Roger Moore will not take a meeting with him. So here we have a little film. It was a little low-budget independent film, and it gets picked up by all the networks and Warner Brothers and everybody, and they blast it all over the place. So I think in the list of things that should get done, throwing out the congressmen and stuff, stopping the forest fires, I think we need to basically remove the license from the networks and invoke the Sherman antitrust laws on the 6 conglomerates. You know, the whole freaking movie industry and the news is owned, operated, and run by Comcast, Viacom, Walt Disney, Time Warner, Sony, and 21st Century Fox. And they basically act as a monopoly. So we need to break that up, one. And number two, we need to invoke the FCC license. Now, I've read the FCC license that the networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN, they all have to live under this licensing agreement. And one of the things the licensing agreement says over and over is that the public airwaves are supposed to be impartial, serve the public good. I ask you, every time you turn to ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, and CNN, they're bashing Trump?
Yeah.
How is that impartial?
Yeah, we don't care about their blasted opinion. They're up there to report raw news, and that's it. So I agree. I think that they're indictable. The First Amendment is there for a period.
They're violating their FCC license. They should have their license revoked or reviewed. So Trump, you know, instead of fighting with them all day long, he should simply just announce that we're going to start to take action to remove their license. Boy, that would stir them up.
Yeah.
Well, he just calls them fake, and it's stuck, you know?
Yeah.
Well, Trump is just acting like a child, just fighting with them because he loves to fight with them. What we need to do is disassemble them.
Yeah.
Because they're all controlled by the same people. You've got three studios, movie studios. You've got 3 networks. Okay?
Yep.
And each one of them is controlled by 3 executives. The CEO, the chief operating officer, and the chairman of the board are basically the executives, okay? 3 people in each one of these entities makes the decisions on what programming gets put out to millions of people, 94% of the public. What movie is greenlit, what goes on television. 3 people, that's 18, 3 times 6 is 18 people in the networks, 18 people in the MPAA studios, and 18 people in the conglomerates that own all of the above. That's 3 times 18. 3 times 18 is what? 56. We've got 56 white males of European heritage, all liberal, all secular, and all one other attribute. And is it okay to say it on your show?
Go for it.
You know the attribute. They're Jewish. They're Ashkenazi. They're not even Israeli Jews. They're Ashkenazi.
Correct.
Liberal, male.
Correct.
Liberal, European heritage. Nothing wrong with any of those demographics. Nothing wrong with you if you're a male, if you're a Jew, if you're a liberal. You have a right to be a liberal. You have a right to be from Europe. You have a right to be secular if you want. The problem is when all of them are the same, you don't get any shows that are diverse. You don't get any various opinions.
Correct.
And that's not healthy for a democracy.
No, it is not.
You see, the First Amendment offers special protections to the press, all right, who are educating. They are providing a very sincere public service when they take this information that you and I, we're the productive, we're the motor of the country. We're out working, creating, doing, inventing. We have put a huge amount of trust and responsibility in the press. Okay, it's freedom of the press. What we see when we turn on the news now, I don't care if it's MSNBC or Fox, are shows and programs and opinions. What needs to, I think, be part of the solution is to identify in law what is press and what is propaganda. Because propaganda is not protected under the First Amendment as far as the press is concerned. You know, it's individual free speech, but you don't enjoy the protections that the press has.
Right. The problem is these anchors and these pundits that go on these network shows, I'm not talking about Fox News for the most part, they are not able to have free speech.
Yeah.
Because if they freely speak the way they want to speak, they will be fired by their bosses.
Yeah, yeah, they get dispersals usually real early, 3, 4 in the morning. There's things going out every day to the mainstream media, and that's why when you flip from channel to channel, it's literally a script. I'm sure you must have seen the clips where word for word over dozens of stations, dozens and dozens, saying the exact same thing.
And you know what? That gives me an idea. You guys are just giving me an idea that I haven't thought of regarding what to do about the mainstream media. What if the pundits or the anchors sued their bosses? In other words, you got the CEO, and these guys that are the bosses are people like Harvey Weinstein. Okay. Shouldn't these pundits and anchors be ticked off that they can't say what they want to say? Glenn Beck can't say what he wants to say, and he's kicked off. You've got Pat Buchanan used to be on MSNBC. Can't say he's kicked off of that.
Yeah.
Shouldn't these people be pissed at their freedom of speech being truncated? Because frankly, I believe that most of the people in the media, radio, television, print, are good people.
I am. Mm-hmm.
I believe they're good-hearted people. They're just under pressure, undue pressure at the network level.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you remember Ron Paul's solution of the Federal Reserve. He didn't want to go out there and just, abolish it outright overnight. His solution was to simply allow for competition, to allow a currency of real money based on metals. It's got tangible value. Just allow it to compete. This could be a very similar thing. Is we just got to allow access. These entities that want to actually seek out and share news, raw news, be given that access. How do we get these guys off the net from dominating the networks?
First, I just want to address quickly this thing about the money and Ron Paul. This is what the fiat, or this is what the legal tender laws are all about. There's a set of laws, they're called legal tender laws. And if you notice when you look at a dollar bill, it says on the dollar bill, this note is, I don't remember the exact words, it says this note can be used to extinguish debts, public and private.
Yeah.
Okay? So that means that you have to pay your taxes with Federal Reserve notes. In other words, if you send in a chunk of gold or silver to your IRS to pay your taxes, they will return it to you in a bag and say, sorry, but this is not legal tender. Okay? If you pay off your plumber or your carpenter with a lump of silver, he can sue you in a court of law and say he never got paid because you can't extinguish debt using gold or silver. So the first thing Ron Paul, I believe, said, and many people, including Edwin Vieira, proposed this, is we got to get rid of these legal tender laws because that will allow other forms of currency to go into competition with each other,
right?
Such as gold and silver. The second thing we have to do is remove taxes from gold and silver. If people want to use gold and silver, they shouldn't have to pay a tax on it because that inhibits the whole thing.
Yeah, well, that's not the only tax we got to get rid of. Get rid of the whole 16th Amendment, actually.
There's millions of taxes. In fact, we were going to do a movie on taxes, but the survey indicated that people were more interested in Agenda 21.
Cool.
Well, a lot of taxes come from that. I'm sure you'll be able to give those people a little intellectual fix because I'll bet you could scroll pages and pages of all kinds of green and sustainable taxes that are on us right now. This state's currently considering a rain tax, and this isn't anything new. It's been going on for a while, to tax every impervious square foot on your property, your roof, your driveway, your swimming pool, your patio, anything that's impervious. They're considering taxing it by the square foot as a rain tax.
Oh.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. We had a movie called Tax to Death in development, but I'm looking at the survey right now, and Agenda 21 got twice as many votes as Tax to Death.
Wow.
So I will take your advice, and I will weave that into the movie because it is a part of Agenda 20. They're trying to put a global carbon tax on everybody.
Yeah. This does come at a cost. There's none of this. They like to say we presume that you'll see increases in your property values, or we think your taxes will go. These are all musings. They have no evidence. You'll never see them produce documents, numbers, and facts to support their musings of lower taxes and greater economic opportunity. It's just not there. And it shows. They never back up their grand assumptions, ever.
Yeah, these taxes at the local level are just insane. I mean, I homeschooled my kids, and yet I'm shoveling out these checks, property taxes. The majority of the property taxes is school tax.
Yeah.
So I'm in essence paying to educate my kids at home, and I'm educating the neighborhood kids.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
And, it really ticks me off.
Yeah, and you don't get access to school
True.
resources, which you're supposed to get even as a homeschooler. Well, that's a show in and of itself. Hey, listen, we're down to our last 5 minutes here. Can you share a website out there? Let people know where they can get updates on the upcoming film Unsustainable. Again, how they can check out some of your old documentaries and help out where they can in the production of this.
Okay, I'll give you 3 URLs. So if anyone has their pencil ready, the first URL is the URL to the new website for the movie project, and that is unsustainable.us. Now, for those of you that can't remember that title, such as me, I would call it Unforgiven. That's a Clint Eastwood movie. Remember that thing?
Yes. Yes.
So I'm going to send this movie project to Clint's office there at Malpaso. And I'm say, hey, Clint, would you be in this movie? It's called, Unsustainable.
Oh, cool.
You can interview with your guts on, right?
Oh, that would be nice. Boy, that'd be a score for the movie.
And he's a conservative, too, so it's not
Oh, yes,
question.
he is.
Yeah.
So the website's called unsustainable.us. Now, for those of you who can't remember the word unsustainable, I also filed agenda21.us.
Okay.
So you can arrive at the website by either going to agenda21.us or unsustainable.us.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Okay?
Excellent.
And then the second website is simple. If you want to watch all the movies for free, just go to homevideo.net. That's homevideo.net. And they're all there for free. And if you like any of them, you could actually buy a box of DVD. And that's the third and last URL.
Oh,
go
great.
to moviepubs.net. Moviepubs.net
Ooh,
to
nice.
get DVDs.
Ooh.
Nice.
Ooh, great.
Now, what's been the other movie's been out for a little while now? Have you gotten some feedback from that? How are people liking that?
Yeah, I have gotten no negative feedback from Good Guys with Guns, just positive feedback. It's percolating throughout the society. There's been, 5, 10, 20,000 people have watched it.
Nice.
There's about maybe 3, 4, 5 people watching it per hour coming into the home video network.
Excellent.
And the DVDs, people are percolating through the DVDs. I just got a large order from News with Views. So the movies,
great.
They percolate out there, and they get word of mouth, and they just, do their thing. And once in a while, something goes viral and goes crazy.
Nice. Well, you know what?
And
The
I
next
hope
time,
this one will go crazy.
I think it will. I really think this is a timing is everything, and I think you're going to nail this one here. I really do.
Well, you do a magnificent job, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and thank you for being in the movie, David. It was a pleasure, and we're gonna see if we can interview you again, but not under such pressure.
I was I was pretty spent there.
The weight of the world on you that day, I'll tell you.
Absolute honor, though, to be involved, and always a pleasure to stand up and advocate for the Second Amendment and the Constitution in general. So, totally my pleasure, and I was honored to be involved. James, thank you very much. The listeners, has been James Yeager, independent film producer. He's coming out with a new film called Unsustainable. It's all about Agenda 21. You can check more about that out at unsustainable.us, agenda21.us, and homevideo.net is where you can check out some of James' past films.
And you can purchase video, DVDs.
Yep, you get purchase those, have little viewing parties, get people together and talk this stuff up. James, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Cynthia.
You bet. You bet.
Have a good night, and we'll be talking soon, brother.
Okay. Take care.
Bye now. All right, boy, I tell you, that's exciting stuff. I was really as giddy as a schoolgirl to be involved in that. It's the first time I've ever been involved in something like that. I was a little nervous, I'll have to admit.
Oh, you did a great job.
Oh, boy.
Loved watching you in that.
Yeah, it was an experience, It's like I said, it's a pleasure to be able to advocate for the Constitution. So, anyways, folks, thank you all so much for those that hung in there, we had the usual problems with Facebook. Not sure how long we're going to deal with those Jamokis. I'll see what I can do. Get
Boy,
something
do
up
I
there.
hate Facebook.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we
hate
got some,
them. I hate you.
We got some angry fans on.
I hate ya.
On Facebook. We'll
Sorry.
make it up to you though. We're going to have lots of good content out there. I think I'm going to put out a special this week for those that missed the show. Other than that, thank you all so much for tuning in. Check out the show archive at IPMNation.com.
And you can join the conversation there. We just have to get used to this because I'm about had it with Facebook.
Oh, man.
Disgusted.
So good. We got chat over there, too, going?
No, this was from a month ago. So
oh, well.
We've got to get the heck off of Facebook, David. I'm about had it.
We are going to blast it out
Sick of
everywhere,
it.
far and wide. We got lots of information to share.
Excuse my frustration.
And lots of ears to share it with.
Love you guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Fly your flags high. Keep your powder dry, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same bat channel.
Pastry.
Love each other out there.
I've got that lightning inside me, son of a god. I'm like a titan that's rising on just you watch. I'm stepping into fate. There is no time to waste. I've got that lightning inside me. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. I'm cranking up on the throttle, victory is mine. Show you the harder the battle, harder I fight. I've come too far to quit. Step back, I'm going in. I'm cranking up on the throttle. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. Like iron from the